Awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to PhotoShelter's second Inside Look with Brooke McDonough, Development and Communications Manager at the International League of Conservation Photographers. We're so happy to have you here today. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
We are both joined here by my coworker and colleague, Yoav.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see some familiar names and faces. My name is Yoav Gutman. I'm joining from Asheville, North Carolina. Been with the PhotoShelter team for a few years now, being on these webinars. And I want to welcome Brooke, and I really want to welcome Larissa as well, taking on the hosting duties for the first time here at PhotoShelter. And we all know you're going to be great. And excited to learn from both of you in this next webinar.
Yeah. I am, as Yoav just let all of you know, I am new to the PhotoShelter community. I am the content marketing manager at PhotoShelter. I'm based here in Astoria, Queens, and you may have seen me in the Slack chat on a couple of other webinars and also at our last summit, the Workflow Summit in March. If you're unfamiliar with PhotoShelter in general, let's just tell you a little bit more about what we do here. We are a DAM platform, a dynamic asset management platform that helps teams store, organize, access, and share content effortlessly with the fastest and easiest digital asset management tool for creative teams. So yeah, that's what we do. Before we get started, we do have just a couple of announcements. We are hosting our next summit session series in the series. It's on June 24th. It's a collaboration summit. It's going to be a day full of insights and inspiration, strategy tips, and networking with tons of different industry leaders and creative professionals across industries. Lots of them may be in the live chat today and joining you on this call, but we will have the registration link to join and sign up and save your spot now in the live chat in just a moment. Jeremy will be working behind the scenes to get y'all that link, and we will, if you want to join us, if you're free, please do. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have your thoughts and your conversation there as well. The focus and theme for the summit is collaboration. So yeah, we're going to get into how Brooke and her team collaborate on content in general, how PhotoShelter really enables the collaboration between their content team members and how they share stories that really shed a light on nature conservancy and the beautiful creatures of this world. We're really excited to discuss how you use the Hootsuite integration in particular to power a global creative workflow. As a social media manager myself, and just in knowing all things about strategy and digital marketing platforms and all the tools, social scheduling tools are super useful, super helpful for getting content out there fast, quickly, easy, and getting conversations started. And Hootsuite is one of my favorites. So we're going to actually be learning a little bit about how Brooke utilizes this tool and our integration to get stories around the globe told and get the conversation started. As we mentioned, we're going to be chatting in Slack, so if you have questions about anything she's presenting today, any of the stories that she's sharing, we would love to hear from you. I know that I have already got the wheels started from chatting with you a bit, Brooke, so just would love to learn more about you and what you're going to tell us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Let me just get this presentation going really quick.
Yeah, take your time.
Always takes me just a second. There we go. We can see it, right?
Beautiful, beautiful.
Oh, okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here with me, and thank you, PhotoShelter, for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk about the organization that I work for and just deeply admire, the International League of Conservation Photographers, and some of our social strategy. So ILCP, as we call it, because that's quite a long title, our mission is supporting environmental and cultural conservation through ethical photography and filmmaking. And we are really a members-based organization. We're made up of over 120 members all around the world. They're professional photographers and filmmakers focusing on conservation, shining a light on those conservation issues or telling stories of hope, anything like that. And we really work in partnership with our members to provide them development opportunities, expedition opportunities, fiscal sponsorships, conservation partners, so on and so on. And they're really the foot soldiers on the ground sharing these conservation stories all over the world. And I just really admire and look up to all of them. And I'm really grateful to be working with all of them.
Amazing.
So let's dive right on into some conservation stories. I've got a couple of case studies for us to look at and we can talk through. The first one is an expedition in Puerto Rico that we did in Puerto Rico called Nature is the Light. And in February of 2020, we had this expedition, as I said, in Puerto Rico that was documenting how communities recover after natural disasters and the benefit of healthy ecosystems and how they can bounce back faster. So this is Shane Gross. He is an emerging league photographer of ILCP, and he is the one who went on this expedition, and he was the lead photographer. And we've had a lot of success in our social media, kind of taking our audiences into the field with us. So that kind of works to engage them with the photographer and filmmaker, the specific story or issue that we're telling or talking about, and our work as an organization, as a nonprofit. So I kind of like to flip between this kind of front-facing content that the photographer is making and any behind-the-scenes content that we have. And that's kind of a really great way of achieving a full-fledged, full, complete story and that real engagement both with the story itself, but the organization and the individual photographer or filmmaker. So I think you'll see that kind of as a theme throughout these different examples I'm talking about and through our mobile storytelling strategy. So on this expedition, I was really lucky to go to Puerto Rico with Shane and create some of this behind the scenes photography and film. And so you could really see clearly both sides of the kind of front content, as I call it, which is what the photographer is making, and the behind the scenes that I was creating. So here is a shot that I took, and then you can see the direct result from that behind the scenes shot.
I love that.
I know, the little crab, and we had so many tourists that were laughing at us just like laying on the ground.
Truly.
Kind of digging through the sand with the crabs, but it was so fun. And I think it just shows a little bit more depth than just this single image. I mean, this is such a cute image, but that behind the scenes content's really fun for us to create. So the main goal, as I talked about, was to show these ecosystems in Puerto Rico, the people who rely on these ecosystems for their livelihood or food source or anything like that, those who are working to protect the ecosystems. Like here, this man is working to protect the sand dunes, which are really the first line of defense against hurricanes. And another major goal was to photograph biobays. So a biobay is, full name is a bioluminescent bay, and it is an area of water. Mind you, I'm not a scientist, so I might butcher the explanation of this, but essentially there's a high level of dinoflagellates in the water. So when someone at night moves around, it kind of stirs them up and it glows. We were talking earlier about fireflies. This is like the underwater version of these dinoflagellates in the water. They're not bugs, but they're just something in the water that makes it glow.
So cool.
And there are 5 biobays in the world, and 3 of them are in Puerto Rico. So we went to this one, which is Peguera's Biobay, and Shane had this idea to photograph it at night with a long exposure. The newer cameras are really sensitive to light, and so this was like a really brand new idea of photographing the biobays. And there were some challenges with that. At first, our plan was to kind of be along the edges. You can see in the tree line here where it's a little bit shallower and you could put a tripod in the water. But as it turns out, the bioluminescence isn't as strong in shallow water, so we really needed to be in the middle of the bay. And that was an issue because the long exposure, any kind of slight movement from the boat made things kind of blurry or out of focus. So the water was really silty, so we were struggling with that. You can see here.
Wow.
In some cases, the stars were kind of in streaks. This is better than the first shot I just showed you in terms of getting what was Shane was kind of picturing in his head, but it's not quite there yet. So we were in the middle of the bay. We had 3 anchors. We were trying to build like 50-foot tripods with like kayak paddles or things like that. It was a lot of troubleshooting, but eventually on a really still night, we were able to make this image, which was really Shane was able to make this image, which was really kind of what he was imagining. And fun fact, this little person in the water with the life vest on was me. I was the person kind of in the water a lot when we needed a model. So life takes you places you never thought you'd go.
Yeah. Thank goodness.
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing experience. It was so fun. So we had a couple of goals for sharing this story. We obviously wanted to share Shane's images and show the Puerto Rico story in general. And then we wanted to share Shane and ILCP stories, which were my images and videos of him kind of behind the scenes or in tandem with his content. And that just allowed a couple of different ways of telling the story, trying to reach new audiences and have a wider reach than just one singular story. So in terms of Shane's story, it was published in After a Photographer, and Pew Charitable Trust used it a lot and has featured it a number of times. So that's been really successful and great. And then the behind the scenes content has been fun to tell organization story through our social platforms. So Yoav, if you want to go ahead and play this first video, that would be great.
All right, it's just going to take me 1 second to get it going here.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, I'm about to share, I just screenshotted, but the pattern of the bay and the pattern you made in the water are kind of similar, and it looks like a snow angel. So I'm just going to share that because I think it looks
Oh my
cool.
gosh, I love it.
All right, here we go.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, I just want to check that you can see my keynote again. Is that the case?
Not yet.
Okay, oh, here we go.
Sorry
guys, I'm not as skilled at it as the PhotoShelter team. Okay, so that video that you just saw ended up in this photo. So we were able to use kind of this behind the scenes, like that was just shot on my cell phone. Again, you can see me in the background. I just float around in the background of all the photos. But it just, again, shows that complete picture and just a really fun way of engaging our audiences through our different social platforms. We've had a lot of success with video. So it's really fun when you can combine that with these kind of breathtaking images and show how they were made. I don't think people really picture Shane standing in, I think it was like a harbor when that happened. So it's just a fun way of connecting people with the audience, or connecting the audience with the photographer rather.
So cool.
Yeah, it was so fun. Another way that we showed the behind the scenes in this case was specifically showing how we photographed the bioluminescence, or how Shane did. We, as I told you, we faced a lot of challenges and we weren't 100% sure if it was going to work. It was kind of a new photography technique we were trying. I keep saying we, Shane was trying, he was the photographer for it. But we were a little worried that it wasn't going to work, and we still kind of wanted something to show for it and to be able to tell that part of the story. So since I was there, I made a short, I think it was about 5 minutes, behind the scenes video that we shared through Vimeo, through different social platforms, and on IGTV of Shane's attempt to make this photograph. And then we kind of, at the end, we say, head to our story map, which is where we had published the full story to check out if the how the image turned out. So Yoav, if you want to go ahead and play this little clip as well.
Awesome.
Sorry, just not sure where it went.
No worries.
Let's try this again. This is not the right one. Oh, well, this is how you know we're doing it live.
Yeah, for real, right?
I think it has select in the title.
All right, here we go. Here we
That
go.
helps.
So my idea was to spend a significant amount of time in the bioluminescent bays to try to capture that beauty. But it's not easy. We need to do long exposures, and for that, you need to be very still. On a moving boat, it's very difficult. And the bioluminescence doesn't like to go near the edges, so we need to be in the middle of the bay in order to capture it, which makes it a very interesting challenge.
Okay. Thanks, Yoav.
Oh, cool.
And we're back.
All right,
So that
coming
was just
back
a thanks. That was just a really small sampling of this video, of this film, that kind of went through the efforts and why we were trying to show it, and just give a little bit more context and details to the expedition itself, which helps engage and draw the audience in to say, well, did they get the shot? Was it successful? To learn a little bit more about Puerto Rico in that way, to learn about why we were there, things like that. So it was just another way of kind of engaging with our audiences.
I love that. It's the effort across everything. I'll hold all of my praise and my questions for the end.
Thank you. You're always welcome to interrupt to praise me. Just kidding. I'm humble, I swear. So switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about another expedition we did recently with an ILCP associate fellow, Neil Ever Osborne. He photographed mountain gorillas in Africa, and the project was called The Comeback, because it was really a story of hope about these mountain gorillas who had faced challenges with habitat destruction, conflict within the community, things like that, but have really made a miraculous comeback. The local community has really bought in and invested in these mountain gorillas, and it's just a really beautiful story. He looks at how similar these creatures are to us. Again, he looked really closely at the local community and how important they've been to this comeback, how much work they've done. And I mean, I could just look at these amazing photos of gorillas all day. So again, just like with Shane's story, we had kind of two avenues for sharing this story, or two sides of the story, I guess. We wanted to share Neil's images and through publications, and share ILCP and Neil's story as a photographer through our social media campaigns. Because as a nonprofit, our ultimate goal is to further conservation efforts. So as we can reach as wide an audience as possible, that'll really help us in achieving that goal. So in this particular project, we were partnered with the Smithsonian Magazine, and it was their 50th anniversary edition. So the article was published in Smithsonian. They did an online event featuring it. This will come up again in our social channels, but in terms of getting the story out, a partnership with Smithsonian Magazine or any kind of outlet like that is always really, really helpful, because they already have that built-in audience. That kind of support can be really helpful. So we're super lucky for that partnership. And then for our social outreach, Reels has started to be introduced, and Instagram stories were still super important. In this case, we didn't have someone in the field with Neil. It was a little bit harder to get to, things like that. It just wasn't really in the cards this time. So we wanted to create content that would engage through these various networks, kind of like I was talking about, Instagram stories, Instagram Reels, our posts, things like that, As you can imagine, Instagram is our main platform just because it's so visually based. So in this case, in partnership with Neil's marketing company, Evermaven, sorry, we created these Instagram stories, and some of them were converted into Instagram Reels that were a little bit more quiet and contemplative rather than that like cell phone behind the scenes footage, because it utilizes his photographs and stuff. So I think I'll just show you what I mean. It'll be a little bit more clear. Yoav, if you don't mind playing the third video, that'd be great.
Sounds good.
And this one doesn't have audio, so if you don't hear audio, don't worry.
I keep talking and then forgetting that I'm muted, but no problem. Also, for anybody who wants to connect, drop your LinkedIn in also the live chat. That would be lovely.
Wow. All right, Brooke, it's coming back to you.
Great, thanks, Yoav. All right, so that was more focused on the gorilla story, as you could tell, rather than the story of Neil, but it was just such a powerful story, and the text that went with the article for the Smithsonian magazine was really powerful, and so that was kind of a different approach. And we had a couple of those. You can see them on our, or it's a highlight on our Instagram if you'd like to see more, that we had throughout the week, kind of in conjunction with our Instagram takeover. So along with that, to kind of get that look with Neil and to feel more connected to the photographer and the work that was being done, we had an Instagram Live with Neil. We also had hopes of having one of the Rangers join us for the Instagram Live, but unfortunately, his internet just wasn't strong enough at that time. We're hoping to do something at some point with him, but we just got to kind of get that internet situation figured out. Although it would be great to have the voice of a Ranger and be able to talk to him. But Neil was also a great ambassador for them. He talked about what great work they did and the challenges that he faced. And he did a really great job at kind of demystifying some of those myths around gorillas. People think they're really violent, things like that. So another great way, and we have really great engagement with our Instagram Lives during, but for the most part afterwards when we share them to IGTV. So that's always fun to get to connect with your audience that way and answer questions live, just like a webinar.
Exactly.
So again, this partnership with Smithsonian was really helpful. They have like over 100,000 followers on Instagram, and they did a takeover. We got a ton of impressions. We did have a boost of engagement and followers. This was their 50-year online event that they did. And just any kind of cross promotion with someone like that, an outlet like that, can really help because you're just reaching more audiences. And again, that's our ultimate goal, is to tell these stories and help people take action to protect whatever issue or creature we're talking about. So that was a really great one.
Amazing.
And then my final example, and then we can dive into some questions in the Hootsuite integration, was a fundraiser that we did for the month of March, I believe. I'm gonna have said that wrong now. I should have written it down. But for the month of March or February, the one that was Women's History Month, we did a Women of ILCP print sale. So the profit from that went to ILCP and the women photographer herself. So in this case, our strategy was really kind of leveraging our members' massive followings, because some of our members are basically Instagram influencers. They have huge followings. So kind of using that to get new audiences and reach new people, promotion through our own social media and our newsletters, and using this driving message that you get a print, which is always fun, and that the money goes directly into conservation efforts. So you're really making a purchase to support conservation.
Amazing.
So here are just some examples. We had Beverly Jo Bear as a part of it. She's a famous photographer from South Africa, and she has a couple 100,000 followers on Instagram. I don't know the exact number, but you can see her at the bottom. She posted this photo of hers that was available for purchase, and it got 18,000 likes, which is more than we typically get. So that's great. And we definitely got a boost in followers from that. And then here on the right-hand side, you can see a screenshot of one of the emails that we sent out. So kind of promoting it through different channels. And it's interesting, Beverly had some really good success. She sold a decent number of prints through promotion on her social media, because her followers are really connected to her as an individual. We had some really good success through social media, but we had our most success in terms of promoting it through our newsletter. We just found that our newsletter subscribers were maybe a little bit more engaged that way in terms of financially, rather than just promoting or signing a petition or something like that. So it's just interesting to see how our different audiences engage in different ways. And it's pretty easy to promote such amazing photographers in such amazing images. I just thought I'd throw some of these in because they are so beautiful. And women in conservation photography and filmmaking is something really near and dear to my heart. So it was really fun to get to work with these women who are just amazing.
Oh my gosh, so beautiful.
So it was a success for our first print sale. We sold over 40 prints and 25 women participated. So we were really happy with that. We definitely learned different methods for promoting it and getting it out there. And we're really excited that we will be having some more print sales coming soon. So keep an eye out for those. If you're interested, feel free to subscribe to our newsletter or our social media. But for the first one, we were really excited with how it went. And we will be using the PhotoShelter platform for our next one, which will be really great. It'll help streamline a lot of things. So let's talk about the Hootsuite integration, which has been my lifesaver. Oh my gosh. So I'm sure we have a ton of social experts on here, and I'm sure you know that Hootsuite can really help overcome some challenges. We at ILCP are a super small team. There's 3 of us that work the majority of the time. These are the 3 of us on the right-hand side. This picture was taken pre-COVID, so don't worry. 2 of us are part-time workers, and as a nonprofit, we have limited resources. We definitely have great resources, but you know, we're trying to put as much of our time and effort and resources into conservation as possible. So making the most of all of our time, everything like that is super important. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through how I go through our Hootsuite and PhotoShelter integration and setup. So let's take Puerto Rico, for example. I would go here on the upper left-hand side, you can see we have a list of our expeditions in different galleries in PhotoShelter. And I would click on the Puerto Rico one. Let's say I want to post a photo about the mangroves in Puerto Rico. So I clicked on it and you can see it open here on the lower right-hand corner. And it's got a whole bunch of pictures. I scroll through and I pick one of these mangrove photos with some beautiful light and figure out what I want to say. Our photographer, so in this case, it would be Shane, who you've seen a lot of photos of, and our digital asset manager, Colin Wheeler, work together to put in the description and caption, the keywords, all of that. So that's really helpful for me to be able to see all that information, because we have hundreds of thousands of photos in our PhotoShelter account. And while Colin is basically an encyclopedia of all the different animals and landscapes, I am definitely still learning. So it's really helpful for me to have that information when I'm writing the caption, figuring out what I want to say and things like that. So I'm sure it's helpful for him that I don't call him, every 20 minutes to help me write captions. So that's really helpful, particularly since we've been working remote. When we used to have our desks next to each other, I could just roll over and ask him. But now that we're kind of working in different places, it's also a huge help. So I picked this picture and then I go over, there's a couple ways I can pull it up within PhotoShelter or within Hootsuite. Once I go into the media library and pick the PhotoShelter integration, I can just click through the galleries and then it'll come up, which you'll see I have an example of in a minute. But as I mentioned, we have so many files and so many galleries that sometimes that's not the most efficient way of doing it. And I'm all about efficiency. So the keywords are super important. So in this case, I searched Maria because it's a Hurricane Maria who affected these mangroves. And you can see here on the right picture that a whole bunch of photos pop up. A bunch of the mangrove ones are there. So I just select the one that I wanted and it automatically resizes it and puts it in for me, which is such an amazing help because particularly with the women print sale, we typically have really large files, but for the women print sale, they had to be like the biggest files as possible for the printer. So they were all in there as TIFFs. And so, we've had 25 photographers, which each had 3 images. That's a lot of photos for me to be downloading and resizing. And it just takes a lot of time. And so being able to just select it and having it resize automatically has been amazing. It saved so much time for me. I can't talk it up enough. But here is the other way that I would put one in once I'm in Hootsuite. And that's just by clicking through the different galleries. So Yoav, if you want to go ahead and play this last video, that would be awesome.
So Brooke, can you walk us through what we're seeing here?
Yeah, so I went ahead and clicked on the media the media gallery, and then I clicked through the different collections that we had. So I went into the, images available for print, and then I clicked on the one that I wanted, which in this case, I used Krista Slyer as an example, just because the flash print sale is over and it's not visible.
I think that you're muted.
I was muted this whole time.
There we go. No, you just for 1 second. Just for 1 second.
What was the last thing you heard?
You basically said that you selected the image from Krista Schleier and then it paused.
Oh, okay. So
you
I won't
walk
re-walk through the
it,
whole thing.
and we can do it for one more time. Yeah, that would be cool.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, it opened the Krista Schleier gallery, which are just all of her images that we have available for print. And we had a whole bunch of the images in that gallery, and I could scroll through and pick whichever one I wanted. And so I clicked on that image that I chose, and you can see in the video, I already had put text in. I would probably write, a more robust caption, but I just, for the sake of example, wrote Women of ILCP flash print sale. And then I had selected the time and everything, and I went ahead and hit schedule. So it really took you from, I had selected the time I wanted the post to be, and that is everything I needed to do. Once I had done that, it was scheduled on Instagram, and it could have been on multiple platforms. I often select Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter and just schedule them all at one time. It's amazing. It's such a lifesaver.
It's so fast and easy.
I know. And the slowest thing was loading the folders, and that's just because my internet here is very slow.
It's always the connection thing also. Those working
yeah,
together.
That was my own thing. That wasn't the integration at all. So yeah, that kind of is an example of a Hootsuite setup that I would use with this integration. It really helps us get these stories out really quickly and efficiently. And, oftentimes we don't know when a conservation issue is going to arise. There's recently been a lot of issues with wolves in Montana or things like that. And it's kind of like changing really quickly. And being able to react and get that message out as quickly as possible is super important. And so this integration just takes us one step further to doing that faster. I think you'll have heard from me time and time again through this presentation that we use partnerships for like every project we do in one way or another. We at ILCP are really of the belief that partnerships are key to any project success. And so we're super grateful for PhotoShelter for Brands and our partnership to help us make a conservation impact. And I'm really grateful to all of you for being here and listening. It's been really fun to present to you all. Here are our Instagram handle, our website, and my email address. I'd love to connect with you on any platform. Please reach out. I love kind of geeking out about conservation and photography and filmmaking. So I'm always around to chat. With that, we can switch to questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. That was fantastic and so important to share all of those stories. I feel like I actually know so much more about, environments that I feel like I see other stories shared all the time. Just the beauty of Puerto Rico and the beauty of these different countries. But there are some really important creatures that we have to protect. So amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that and how we enable you to do all of that. I know that so we have been chatting in the Slack group this whole time, and if you would like to hop in there, add any particular further questions that you have and connect with each other, we would love to hear from you. I wanted to just say a quick thank you also to Jeremy, who has been sharing additional links to other story bits that you shared, Instagram links to some of the photographers that you shared, a Vimeo link to the full video of the bioluminescence entire storytelling journey. And I in particular just like, wow, so impressed at how you captured all of the different angles of these stories as well. As a content marketing manager myself, I feel like that's super important, to tell all of the different levels of the story for different entry levels of interest, and so I feel like that's really great. Thanks for also educating us on the background of how you particularly, do your workflow, how you actually use our platform, how you're getting the stories out super quickly and timely. Also know that that's very important as well, especially when we're dealing with such crucial nature and culture conservancy issues as this. I'm just going to quickly drop in the ILCP PhotoShelter public portal gallery for people to check out additional nature and culture conservancy photo series stories as well. And
great.
Yeah. Yoav, do you have you seen any or been collecting any of those initial cues over?
Definitely some questions coming through, and people actually emailed me some before too as well. So One question, just kind of jumping off, I'm sorry, apparently someone's decided to cut their grass right now.
Can't hear it?
One question, okay, you can't hear it, great. One question, just starting kind of at the end there with the Hootsuite plugin, just about like, it seemed like how Colin was getting the images, like that whole, from the Congo all the way to Instagram, like maybe if you could just kind of break that down even further.
Yeah, a big way that the photographer get the images to Colin, I know depends on just their internet connectivity or how strong it is. As you know, we tried to get one of the rangers in and the internet just wasn't strong enough. So either through an FTP, WeTransfer, or Dropbox, or in some cases, if it's really like a huge number of images or something like that, they'll just mail a hard drive. We'd really prefer not to do that, but if we have to, we will. So Colin gets the images through one of those methods. Typically, it's just the one that works the best for the photographer. And we have some requirements for the photographer in terms of keywording and captioning, just as a jumping off point, particularly when they're working with super specific species or something like that, because they're truly the expert on, scientific names of species, which species identification, things like that, that can get really specific. But then Colin spends a lot of time keywording, and I know that we are talking to the PhotoShelter team about working on using the AI software, which I think is going to be another game-changing option for us. So we definitely do a lot of keywording, which for me in terms of content is really helpful also for hashtags and things like that. I like mine the keywords. And so then once it's up there, Colin and I are in a lot of contact about what is being produced. Sometimes it's an article, sometimes it's, a film, it's all these, it depends on the project. But then through that, I can work on a content strategy with Colin and the photographer. And then I just pull them from the PhotoShelter account, which is super helpful also. Because again, those photographers, even if I can get them nailed down for an Instagram Live or something like that, they're constantly in the field working on stories. And so once we've got access to the images to share those stories, we can also manage it for them and getting it out to social, to the editors, things like that, when they're, in the field with no internet connection for weeks on end.
Yeah, that's amazing. And also the fact that you're using the PhotoShelter like caption area description as like a way to communicate a caption idea is also super smart. I have never really thought about that, but definitely will now. Thanks.
Yeah, sometimes I just copy and paste the caption when it's really well written. I'm like, love it, saving me time.
Amazing. Why reinvent the wheel when you already have something great?
Yeah, someone already wrote
Nice.
it. I don't need to do it again.
Just actually the next question is like perfect segue from Ian. He wants to know how long the manual tagging process takes once a new gallery comes in, but maybe we could almost like take one step back from that and just I want to ask or peel back the onion a little bit on one thing you said. So the photographers are tagging and Colin is tagging, right? Or adding metadata.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so do you have a sense of like how long like that whole process takes before you can kind of go public with it?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how many images we're getting. Let's take Shane's Puerto Rico, for example. I think he was in the field, it was over a year ago. I think it was like 8 days in the field. And so it's a minimum, I believe, of like 20-ish images a day. So I think we ended up, this math is not going to be correct, but I think we had around 150 to 200 images total for him, not including my behind the scenes content. So I think that takes, it's Colin's side doing it. So I'm just kind of guessing based on my work with him, but I believe it takes a week to 2, depending on how different the photos are. In this case, Shane covered a lot. He covered the fishermen, the manatee rescue, the bioluminescent bay, things like that. And as part-time workers, we don't work every single day. So I think it's about that long, about a week or 2. In some cases, we've been getting we've become the exclusive representation agent for a number of ILCP photographers. So they're sending their full bodies of work, and that takes, as you can imagine, I'm sure, much longer because we're getting terabytes worth of images.
Wow.
So that's all also, you know, managing that workflow of if we needed to get a story out immediately, could we tag, you know, the first batch of images and then work on a more robust gallery after that, if that makes sense?
Definitely does. Definitely does. And definitely hear you where AI may help, but for sure.
Yes.
I love, I just really still love also the 3-part expedition, like photo creation journey that you kind of mapped out, as a content strategy to tell the Puerto Rico story, especially in the bioluminescent bay, because like, what if you just didn't get any kind of usable image? What kind of story were you going to tell? I think that that's really smart to think about when you're going. And how are you kind of repurposing those images now? Like, do you go back and look at performance of what performs well? Do you go back and see what you haven't shared in the gallery that you have? You know, how are you continuing to tell the story outside of the time frame that it's impacting?
Yeah, so in some cases, the images will continue to be licensed by different partners. Like Pew Charitable Trust, I believe, has licensed that a number of times for different uses. So that's always great, obviously, to just reach different audiences. And then in terms of our social strategy and mobile storytelling, yeah, we'll look back that one image where it was like really successful that I showed of me in the water. We love sharing that one. You know, I'm a model.
Yes.
Because it's just fun to talk about the photography process and things like that. So we use it on a lot of our website outreach and things like that. But yeah, a lot of going back and looking at what hasn't been shared, what would be fun to keep talking about, what's going on. We'll sometimes do look at if something specific is happening in Puerto Rico, we can bring it up again, or if it's, you know, something specific happening in terms of a species and we photographed manatees there or turtles or something, then kind of diving back in and just looking at all the different angles of how we could repurpose the content.
Definitely, definitely. I was going to say the fact that you're sharing everything also through Hootsuite from our platform. When you're doing that, that makes it easy to look at you know, reporting like analytics very quickly in order to see what performed well organically on your platform, and then share that with media partners. Like, hey, this worked really well. Here are the numbers from the platform itself. Very cool.
Sure.
On the Instagram comeback story, sorry, I'm jumping back to the questions that we've gotten, some of the questions we've gotten in there. For the mountain gorilla project story, on the Instagram stories that you created, those assets that you created to share, was there no sound when they were posted to Instagram? And just wondering if why that was, or just, yeah, was there no sound? Curious.
Yeah, that's correct. There was no sound. A lot of people don't watch video with sound, particularly on their phones. You know, I know, let's take a step back a year. When I was going on the metro and things like that, which I'm not doing anymore, but when I was commuting and going on the metro, I'd wear headphones and things, but a lot of times I wasn't, and I would just watch things on my phone with no audio. So we have not actually found a big issue with not having audio. Obviously, if it's a story that audio would really enrich things, like at the end of some of those Instagram stories, we had some really short cell phone footage of the gorillas like banging their chests. And that big like boom, boom sound really enriched that story. So we added that in at the end. In that case, that can always help. Like, I love adding audio into things if it will enhance it. But in terms of having it on social, it actually can be beneficial for us to not have audio, or to have audio like that, where if you're not hearing the boom, boom on the chest, it's not necessarily taking away from the story. It just kind of enriches if you do have the audio on.
Definitely, like soundscapes and podcasts. It's not necessary, but it helps you feel in environment, if you will.
Exactly.
Cool. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I also am curious about in terms of just like success metrics and how one of your last slide was mentioning how key partnerships really just help amplify these really critical, crucial stories. And so in terms of the women's print sale fundraiser, I mean, really fantastic campaign and a kind of effort I've seen through COVID in terms of supporting both like the artists that help a company exist, and then also that supporting the actual conservancy efforts, like fantastic strategy, but also really impactful as well. And just was curious if you could speak a little bit about like the social metric success that you saw in creating that partnership with these fellows and the fellows that actually have this kind of notable influencership on social in this space.
Yeah, it definitely, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but they definitely had like a big boost in engagement and followers. I would wake up every day and notice huge boost in our followers. Pretty big spikes too, right? Like we would see that they posted and then it would have a spike in followers, which is kind of fun to look at. Particularly some of our photographers, Beverly Jobert, Jody Cobb, Christina Minnemeyer, have 100,000 to 1 million followers. So any kind of promotion of our work or vice versa can really help boost that and just like really have a big reach. And just in general, for our social, since I started ILCP like 3.5 years ago, we had a goal of 20% increase every year in our social following, and we have been able to exceed that goal every year. But in 2020 to 2021, our goal was 25% growth. And we really honed in on these different techniques, this Instagram Live, using video, stories, using Reels once they were introduced, and we surpassed the 25% goal. So that was really exciting.
Amazing. I know that the platforms will be happy about that. As soon as you use all the products, like they love that. I love that for you in particular, and also just so that one piece is just so important. Increasing the goals when we have this captive audience, but honing in on which pieces are working, learning exactly what works for your target audiences, and zooming in on that, like fantastic, especially for these stories, like we've been saying, that are so critical and so important. And those little gorilla toes, oh my goodness, I'm so happy about that story. That was really lovely. Would love to know what's next in terms of content, and then would also love for you to hop in the live chat after this call to just share any kind of new links to content that people should see.
Yeah, for sure. So we're super excited to announce that we actually recently received a grant from a family foundation to do 2 expeditions in the next 6 months or so. The timeline will be kind of dependent on COVID restrictions and things like that, but we will be partnering with WildAid to send photographers and filmmakers to cover the enforcement and community engagement of marine protected areas in the Galapagos and the Bahamas. So there's a really big push for marine protected areas to be designated, like to have areas kind of set as marine protected areas, but without the enforcement and community engagement, they're kind of just paper parks. They don't, nothing changes if there's no enforcement of the protection. So that's what we're going to be covering and talking about, like what happens, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road with these marine protected areas, and how can we really make a difference. So right now we're in the expedition planning stage. We got some funding, and we will always like appreciate more fundraising and things like that. But I'm super excited to look at content down the road and having them do these behind the scenes content and partnering with WildAid and doing, mobile storytelling for them as well. And really we can partner with this organization and say, what is our ultimate goal for our social strategy? And then how can we get there through the content we produce? So I'm super excited for that type of planning.
Yeah, we cannot wait to see what stories come out of that. That sounds super lovely and right on time. So thank you so much for really, expounding here, telling us everything about all that you do and how you do it, and about some of the really amazing details of the stories that you're capturing around the world. If everyone on this call enjoyed this discussion and wanted to know more about our MarTech integrations, and also just what we've got going on at PhotoShelter, what and how our clients are using our platform to collaborate with partners and get their stories told, please join our and register for our collaboration summit on June 24th. The link is, I believe, photoshelter.com/vision. I'm gonna Google that right this minute.
Brands.photoshelter.com/vision.
/vision, that brands.photoshelter.com/vision, and we're going to throw it into the Slack group one more time. Would love to see you there, would love to have your colleagues there, and to connect with each other. Thanks again.
Yeah, it was so fun. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm definitely going to be at the 2021 Vision.
Can't wait to chat with you.
Thanks, everyone.